Welcome. This yoga practice is a yin sequence where the yin postures start with a prone shoulder opener that will require some padding. So a few pillows should do the trick. So if you can gather up a few of those will be rather handy. If you have a formal yoga bolster, you can use that instead. Also, blankets might be handy for that posture too. Then after that, we'll practice a forward bend and a hip opener known as square pose. And then supine back bend known as twisted roots. And finally, we'll end the yin posture sequence with Sphinx. Now during the practice, I'll be talking about, and the theme for class will be Earth's sister planet in the solar system, the closest planet to Earth, which is Venus. There is a little bit of a link between Venus, Earth, and Mars, and that Venus and Mars are on either side of the Earth. And they're sort of demonstrating the contrasting polarities of yin and yang. And so that's why we'll be, since I talked about Mars in other practice, today I'll be talking about Venus. Give yourself some time to find a nice stable seat, something that feels rooted, grounded, something that where you can find your center and follow your breath here. It can be cross-legged like I'm sitting. It can be cross-legged sitting up a little bit of height like I'm sitting. Or it can be some other seat if cross-legged is just too uncomfortable or too painful here. And then when you find that seat, soften. We'll do a little bit of breath work. We'll do a little bit of a warm-up before we get into the yin sequence proper here. So the idea is to just cultivate awareness, cultivate attention. Attention and awareness means just doing a systems check, going around and noticing everything that's happening around you and with you in the present moment. That means noticing maybe the noises, the temperature of the room, your surroundings, your inner landscape, such as your physical sensations, where they're located, what the texture is of those, and also allow yourself to gently calm and soften your thoughts. So your thoughts are a part of your present moment. Your thoughts might be really, really like moving quickly through your mind, and that's okay. They can move quickly. Just acknowledge that. And in my experience, when I accept and acknowledge my thoughts, they have a tendency to slow down. And maybe they do for you, maybe they don't. That's okay. So bring more attention then to your breath. So maybe face is soft, maybe eyes are soft, or maybe even closed if that's comfortable for you. And begin to notice a big inhale as you fully fill up your torso with air comfortably, and then as you exhale everything out. We'll try, you can either just do this nice, normal, comfortable breathing, or you can try a lengthened breathing. I like to do it to a count, so I call this 5 to 8 breathing. That means a slow count of 5 on the inhales and a slow count of 8 on the exhales. So the next time you exhale, maybe exhale a little bit more out, really empty yourself out. And then when you inhale to a slow count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, till you're completely full on the 5th count. And then exhale to a slow count of 8. So getting close to almost twice the duration of the inhale. So I like to count down on the exhale. So 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll do this 3 more times. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Top of your inhale, 5. And then exhale from a slow count of 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Final time. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And just for a moment, return your breath to a more normal and natural breath, whatever that may be here, and just honor the breath. It's like, wow, this is my breath. This is what's keeping me alive here. And then when you're ready, just a little bit of a yawn warm-up before we start the in sequence. So make your way slowly onto your belly. Do a little bit of a thigh stretch and a little bit of an active back bend here. This is start out in Sphinx Pose. So bring your elbows underneath your shoulders, shoulder width apart here. We're not doing yin right now. We're actually doing yang here. Take your left forearm and swivel it 90 degrees so it's crossing the front of your torso. And then bend your right knee and bring your right heel in towards your hip as far as it goes. Steady yourself with that left arm. Reach back with the right arm. See if you can grab the right foot. If you've got the right foot, then start pulling that right foot in as far as you go until it stops for you. Oh, you'll feel something here. Don't know where you're feeling it. Probably in the front of the thigh, but maybe in the shoulder as well here. Maybe stay here for 2 more breaths. And if you think you can go a little bit farther, you can just pull in more. If you're in pain, that's too much. You need to back yourself off. And then at some point, release. Come back to Sphinx for a moment. We'll do the other side. So take the right arm this time, rotate the right forearm 90 degrees, and make sure it's planted, rooted in the earth so it's stable. Bend the left knee, reach back with the left arm. See if you can find the left foot. And then same procedure, just pull on that left foot until you're stuck. Or bring it in farther here until you're feeling, this is a yang pose. So there's muscle engagement here to really kind of pull things in. But again, we're not going for pain here. We're just going for some oomph. So maybe 1 more breath here. And then you can go ahead and release. And that was basically the warm-up. We'll start the first yin posture. The yin posture is a pretty decent shoulder opener. I don't have a name for this pose. I just call it prone shoulder opener on a bolster or on some pillows. So this is where you set up your 2 pillows if you have them, or a yoga bolster, or if you're used to doing this without any props, you can just do this on the floor too here. But I find the pillows really nice for shoulders here. So go ahead and lie face down on the pillows so that most of your torso is on the pillows. Top of your head is on the pillows. And then you want to move over to the left, so much so that your right shoulder is smack dab in the middle of padding, because that's where the pressure is going to be. Extend the right arm out to the side, about shoulder height. You can adjust where it is exactly a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfectly in one place, but maybe palm face down. And now you'll take, legs are extended, take the left hand, plant it on the floor and use it to rotate your torso to the left. So you're rolling onto this right shoulder. That's the shoulder that's getting opened up. So you just slowly do this until you find a stopping point. And that stopping point is where you feel enough oomph in this right shoulder where you don't want to go anymore. So it might be just a little bit. You might be here, maybe you're here, maybe you're all the way over. If you're feeling unbalanced here, bend this foot, place the foot on the floor here to create some stability. Now you might have to just stay here. Since this is pretty intense for many of us, we'll only stay here for a couple of minutes here. So not the usual 3 or 4 minutes that I normally spend in pose, just a couple minutes here. If you want a little bit more oomph, some of you might be able to take the left arm and reach back around here, just to open up through the front of the torso here. And then the idea here is to find something where you can soften and settle. Now that you're trying to feel pressure in the shoulder and pressure in the connective tissue running down that arm, but not electrical tingling, not nerve pinching. So if you're feeling that, you have to like rearrange your arm so that's not happening here, because you can actually harm nerves if you pinch them long enough here. If your elbow is in pain, you can give your elbow a micro bend, but if it's only just really pressurized, it's good to give the elbow joint, which is a piece of connective tissue, a little bit of pressure too. So it's kind of up to your discretion. We have about 1 more minute on this side if it's okay. If it's not okay, you roll yourself down. I like this pose to figure out where your edge is. So I talk about the three ingredients for yin practice. The first one is finding your edge. And so the edge is not painful. So if you rolled yourself too much and you feel like you're injuring your shoulder or your arm, that's not your edge. You've rolled too far, so you want to unroll a little bit. If you're kind of just hanging out here and you can take a nap here for like 2 hours and feel absolutely nothing, well, you're not going to hurt yourself. That's not your edge either. Your edge is that place where you're feeling a lot of pressure. Maybe it feels slightly uncomfortable to tell you that you are pressurizing the connective tissue system. All the while you're breathing, you're trying to use your breath to soften the muscle fiber so that you really are just getting into the deeper tissue here. So we're done with this side. If you had that left hand hanging behind you, bring that left hand right around, plant the left hand, slowly unroll yourself until you're back on your belly. And then the counter pose for this shoulder opener is to just do what I call a systems check. Make motions with that arm that you just pressurized. So maybe flex the elbow a few times, flex the wrist, flex the shoulder, make shoulder circles to see if that arm is still working. And when you're convinced it is, then bring yourself up, move yourself over to the other side here. So we'll try the other side of the shoulder stretch. So this time we want the left shoulder in the middle of the padding, so it's on the padding, and that helps to lessen the very intense pressure on the floor here. So lay on the bolster again. Again, I like my head kind of in line with the top of the bolster or the pillows. Move yourself over to the left so that you know your left shoulder is squarely in the nice padding here. And then left arms out to the side, shoulder height, and then press the right hand into the floor to roll yourself onto that left shoulder, opening up that left shoulder. And you're moving slowly so that you stop whenever you feel it. Remember, this is an internal practice. So it has nothing to do with what it looks like. It has more to do with what you're feeling in that shoulder and running down your arm here. And again, like I said, we'll just stay here for a little bit shorter time period, since a lot of us have really tight shoulders, which means an exercise like this can get really intense. You can stay here, just holding yourself in place and trying to soften here in the shoulder, trying. You can bend the top knee, put the foot on the ground to kind of stabilize your balance. Some of you might be able to wrap your right arm behind you, and hopefully head and neck can just kind of hang, or maybe they can even rest on the pillow or the bolster or whatever you're using here. And then just connect with your breath. So the other two principles, when you found that your edge, then you resolve to be still. That's the second point. For as long as you need to be still, And it's usually longer than our mental ego wants. Our mental ego runs off and wants to do something else for a while. The discipline in yin is to maybe stick around a little bit longer than normal. And then finally time. And we can maybe just enjoy our breath here. Or maybe about 5 more breaths on this side. So in another video I talked about Mars, which was one of the neighbors next to Earth in the solar system, and today I decided I'd talk about Venus, which is on the other side of the Earth. So Venus is part of the 4 terrestrial planets next to the Sun. The terrestrial planets are the 4 small rocky planets with relatively thin atmospheres that are closest to the Sun: Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Mars is on one side of the Earth, Venus is on the other side. Venus is close to Earth and about the same size as Earth, so we often call Venus the sister planet to Earth. We can slowly come out of this pose. So if you're still in it, slowly unroll yourself down and then do a systems check on this side. See if that arm still works by working the joints a little bit here. And you can take your time with this, or maybe you'd like to do something else. Maybe something else somewhere else needs a little bit of motion. So you can do that. And I'll start setting up for the next posture. The next posture is known as square pose. Now, square pose is a deep hip opener. That's not for everybody. This is really intimately dependent on how your hip bones are built. So if you're finding you're struggling with square pose, there'll be an alternative to square pose. I say this because when I've taught square pose in a class, this posture seems to give a lot of people trouble. And if it's giving them trouble, there's nothing wrong with them. It's the posture that has issues here. So you'll start out seated, legs out in front. Maybe sitting on some padding if you want to, or not. I think when I finally get into the final version of this posture, I like to not be sitting in some padding. So you might have to experiment here. But for square pose, this is a seated hip opener and forward bend. Bend your right knee and bring your right shin kind of facing crosswise in front of you. And then bend your left knee and see if you can stack your left shin on top of the right shin. So this is basically square pose. Left ankle is somewhere above the right knee, but you can move it around for comfort. So if you've got it on an uncomfortable pressure point, it can be farther out or farther in or farther forward or farther back. You can make those little adjustments. Now, if your knees are floating due to tight hips, and that's creating some pain or instability in the knee, then find something that you can stuff under the knee that's bothering you. Maybe it's this knee. So you take a prop. I grabbed a pillow here, but you can have books or blocks or bolsters or blankets. Stuff it underneath this knee. Some people it's the bottom knee. So you can put it underneath here. You can do other things. You can move the heels in some more. Come to almost a cross-legged seated position if that helps. In other words, modify this shape to see if that helps to get out of pain. And if that's not working, then don't mess with square pose. Try something else. And the alternative I like to offer is eye of the needle pose. So you come onto your back for eye of the needle, bend both knees, and then take the left ankle, place it on the right thigh. This might be enough for you, or bring the right leg in towards your torso until you're stuck. You can take your hands and hold yourself in place by holding the back of your right thigh or front of your right shin here. So this is eye of the needle, and if you're still not feeling anything, then pull everything in with your hands until you find that stopping point here. This is generally can find a place. Again, maybe some of us are clear out here, and this is a good hip opener. But if you're finding that square is working for you, you can come back to square here. And we'll stick around here in square, or I have the needle for about 3 more minutes or so here. You can stay here in square, or you can fold forward. If you want to fold forward, maybe grow up tall through your torso and then hinge forward as far as you go until you're stuck if you want some more oomph. Some people may not go very far. Round your spine. Let it just sag forward. Head and neck can sag. Now it's okay for things to hang in the air, but if not, find a prop to maybe prop up your torso or your head and your neck. So if you have a really stiff bolster like this one, you can just rest your head and your neck on the bolster. Or if you go down a little bit farther and you want some support for your torso, then stuff bolsters. Maybe the bolster's not enough, so now you take your pillows, i.e. the idea is whatever you have around you for using as props, can make constructions that you need to help with support. Again, you might be using those things for your knees here. Soften, settle. Maybe you remind yourself why you're practicing in, why you're doing it. And then I'll begin to talk a little bit more about this planet Venus. That's the closest planet to Earth. Because it's so close to Earth, Venus is about 67 million miles from the sun, and Earth is about 93 million miles from the sun. So at closest approach, Venus it's very, very close to the Earth. Now it's closer to the sun than Earth is. And it is also covered in these opaque white clouds because it's close to us, and because it has these white clouds, it's very, very bright. In fact, it's the third brightest object in the sky after the sun and the moon. And because of that, it's very obvious. It's a very obvious object in the sky. And it was very important to ancient people, because ancient people obviously noticed this very bright object. And it would appear for a few months in the morning, and then it would appear for a few months in the evening. So, of course, it was often known as the morning star and the evening star. So about 5 more breaths here. Now, if you folded forward and you're not feeling anything anymore, maybe relax the muscles in your torso. See if you can sink a little bit more deeply here. But if you're near pain, maybe you need to do the opposite. Maybe you need to start coming out. So a couple more breaths here. But maybe after your next breath, use your hands and your arms to slowly bring yourself up. If you were folded forward and you don't have to fold forward, you can just enjoy the hip opener here. And then lean back, maybe put your hands on the floor so that you can lean back on your arms, and then slowly release your legs here. And then whenever I do these outside hip openers, I like to do windshield wiper legs just to kind of loosen up the hip sockets. So feet are wide apart, knees are bent, and then slowly just bob the knees back and forth until feels a little bit of a release deep in the hips here. And then when you're ready, we'll set up for the other side of square pose. So this time, the left leg is on the bottom, the right leg is on top. If you're doing eye of the needle, then it's the right ankle on the left thigh this time. Decide if you need stabilization underneath the knees. Decide if you want to fold forward or if you want to just stay straight up and just let the legs settle in this hip opener here. Decide if there's different props that you need on this side, because most of us tend to be a little bit asymmetric here. And so it's okay to use different props on different sides here. Fold forward and round if you want to fold forward. Soften your torso. And then we'll get started here for a few more minutes on this side. So in our Western mythology that is derived from Greek mythology, this bright object that made its wonderful appearance right in the morning before sunrise, right in the evening after sunset, these periods of peacefulness and tranquility, graced with this beautiful, brilliant star. And that's what it was considered back in the ancient days. They didn't know it was an entity like Earth. All they knew it was a bright star that tended to have a mind of its own and wander with respect to the other fixed stars. And because this was such a beautiful sight, the ancient Greeks decided to denote this planet the name for their goddess of beauty and love, which was Aphrodite. And later the Romans named it the same thing. So the Roman name for Aphrodite is Venus, and that's where it gets its name. It gets its name from the goddess of love, because it's such a bright, beautiful star that we catch in the evening, we catch in the morning. And indeed, a lot of ancient cultures really revered this star, because like I said, besides the sun and besides the moon, it was brilliant and always made its appearance in the morning, in the evening. So a few ancient cultures didn't even know it was the same entity and thought that the morning star was something different than the evening star, and it was just Venus and Earth doing its little orbital dance around the sun. We know a little bit more about Venus now that we've studied it, now that we've sent space probes to it. What we've realized is it's not quite what we thought it would be. So we have about one more minute on this side of square, if that's appropriate. If you're saying to yourself, oh, I need to come out, then you come out. If you're saying to yourself, I'm kind of bored and not feeling anything, then see if you can sink more deeply into the posture. Venus really captivated our imagination. It was the original planet, when we were starting to learn about it, that we thought maybe it would be so much like Earth that it might harbor life. Because it was about the same size as Earth, it's in the same relative area of the solar system as Earth is. And it had these clouds. And we thought, well, it has an atmosphere, it has clouds, so maybe the surface, we could never see, the clouds are always so thick, we could never see the surface, but we always kind of dreamed that maybe the surface is actually pretty hospitable like Earth's, and it was the original planet that we thought about going to and discovering other life. Over the past several decades, basically my lifetime, we've discovered that it's not a nice place to go to at all here. So one more breath here in square pose. And then go ahead and plant your hands and use your hands to bring yourself all the way up. Maybe lean back and slowly undo your square legs here. Maybe you want to extend them out straight, point and flex the feet a few times. Maybe you want to do windshield wipers a few times to release the pressure in your hips. Maybe there's some other kind of counter pose that you would like to do on your own here for a moment. And then at some point, we'll go ahead and set up for the next posture. The next set of asymmetrical yin postures are a hip opener and a spinal twist, although I always like to emphasize the spinal twist. This is called twisted roots. So you'll make your way slowly onto your back. Knees bent, feet on the floor, initially here. Take your right leg, bring your right leg in towards your torso, wrap your right thigh around your left thigh. This is the twisted root legs here. And then draw your left thigh in here for a moment. Now we're going to twist, and we're going to bring going to allow the hips to lower over to the right. So you might want to, for some of you, it might be nice to actually shift the hips over to the left an inch or two, and then lower the knees over to the right, as far as they go until they stop. Some of you, they'll make it to the floor, no problem. Some of you, they'll float in midair, and some of you might need to put some sort of support underneath them, underneath those legs here. And then this is supposed to be a spinal twist. So even though the legs are going to the right, you want to melt the upper body over to the left. It may not make it to the floor either, but that way you know you're in a spinal twist. Left arm can be out into an outrigger position, kind of a T or a cactus arm position. Head can stay neutral. If it's okay with your head and your neck, you can gaze over that left arm just to get a complete twist in the spine. And then we'll stay here for about 3 minutes. By the way, if the twisted root legs is creating pain in your hips or in your knees, then just undo the twisted root legs. Just keep your knees parallel to one another. Focus on the spinal twist in the torso. Otherwise, if the twisted root legs are fine, then just notice the twist. Just notice the hip opening, mild hip opening in the legs and the hips that are happening here. So what we've discovered about Venus is that even though it's about the same size as the Earth, and even though the core of the planet is probably very similar to Earth's core, that's where the similarities end. So Venus, of all the planets of the inner solar system, has the thickest atmosphere. In fact, its atmosphere is much thicker than Earth's atmosphere. And, of course, it's always has these high altitude clouds. Turns out the clouds are made mainly of sulfuric acid here. And that is because Venus in its early days was a very volcanic planet. In fact, it's considered to be the most volcanic of all of the major planets in the solar system. Most of the volcanoes are extinct, but if you look at the radar images of the surface of Venus, it's littered with extinct volcanoes and lava flows here. So in the past, and one thing that volcanoes produce is sulfur, besides other things like carbon dioxide. And by the way, the thick atmosphere of Venus is it's actually 96% carbon dioxide, and very, 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 very thick. So when you get down to the surface of Mars, this surface where the atmosphere is this hot carbon dioxide, the surface pressure is about 89 times the pressure of the atmosphere of Earth. In diver terms, that's the pressure of water at about 1,000 meters or 3,000 feet below sea level. So you can kind of do the math on how much pressure that is. It easily crushes a car. The temperature, we have about 5 more breaths on this side. The temperature at the surface is also very hot. It's about 860 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to melt lead. So extreme pressure, extreme heat, carbon dioxide, sulfuric acid. This is not a place that's hospitable to life. No water. Can't be any water. Too hot. It's absolutely too hot. Now, in the past, it is speculated that Venus had as much water as the Earth in its early days. And in fact, in its early days, it's quite similar to Earth. But the greenhouse effect ran away on Venus, and that was basically the sun's fault. So the sun got hotter in the early universe, like 3.5 billion years ago. And unfortunately, that was a little bit too hot. That cooked off all of the water, and the water helped make it hotter on Venus before the water itself boiled away into empty space. Just one more breath here. And then slowly bring yourself out of this twist. So maybe you can use your hands to help. Use your hands to kind of bring your knees back up to center. Bring yourself back to neutral. So undo the twisted root legs. And if you feel a lot of rebound from those twisted roots here, you can maybe bring the knees into your chest and give them a hug. Maybe extend your feet up towards the ceiling, point and flex your feet a few times. And then if there's any other kind of moving around you need to do to work out the kinks, do that. And we'll set ourselves up for the other side. So this time, take the left knee and wrap the left knee around the right thigh. Draw the right leg in here. And then from here, again, some of you might find this helpful, some of you may not. Maybe shift your hips over to the right just a little bit so that you can twist, lower your knees over to the left. And again, some of us might end up on the side of our torso. Since this is a spinal twist, I want to melt my right shoulder back so that I know my spine is twisting here. And I might need padding underneath that knee. I might need padding underneath this shoulder. It doesn't make it back to the ground. It can help kind of maintain the twist by just extending this right arm out, making a cactus arm or a T arm here. And then again, your head can turn to the right if you want a little bit of a twist in the neck. But if that's creating pain somewhere in this other shoulder, then upper shoulder, then maybe just look up. Try to take a neutral position with the head here. Find your breath. See if you can find a place of softness and stillness here. And then a couple more minutes on this side, if that's appropriate. Again, if this is too much for your hips, you can just untwist the legs, do the spinal twist without the twisted root legs. So we landed probes. In fact, it was the Russians actually who landed probes on Venus, and the probes literally lasted at most an hour before they were crushed and before they were burned up by this hostile atmosphere. Because of the volcanic activity, there's probably high winds and storms. There's a good indication there's probably lots of lightning on Venus. So this is very, very extreme and brutal environment. So instead of being this fantasy planet of life and of lush rainforests, Venus has turned into just an extreme vision of everything that you don't want for life here. It's brutal. It's extreme, it's brutal. And so therefore, maybe naming it after the goddess of love and beauty and nurturing is not the most appropriate title for it. In fact, this is where we get yin and yang mixed up. So we named Mars the god of war, and Venus is the god of love. But Venus, the atmosphere, is so brutal that maybe we should have named Venus Mars. Maybe it would have been more appropriate to name Venus after the god of war, death, and destruction, because that's what lies in wait for us if we were to try and travel to Venus, even though it's our next door neighbor. Having said that, not all ancient cultures viewed Venus as this object of beauty. Some ancient cultures, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, North and South America, viewed Venus with some fear and trepidation, considered Venus to be a very powerful entity, the planet, the star. The Mayan culture had a special interest in Venus. They incorporated its motion into their calendar. Just about 3 more breaths on this side. In fact, even the Mayans themselves actually used Venus to determine when to go to war. So Venus was in fact a harbinger of war. So maybe their name for Venus actually does mean god of war rather than goddess of love here. 1 more breath on this side, twisted roots. And then on your next inhale, and bring your knees back up to center. Unfurl your twisted root legs. And again, if there's some little motions that you need to do to work out the kinks of that twisted roots, then by all means, make a little bit of motions. Or you can just lie in stillness for a while. But we'll get set up for the next yin posture. And the next yin posture is a back bend known as Sphinx Pose. So make your way onto your belly. Legs comfortably extended out behind you. Doesn't matter how far or near apart they are. Something comfortable. And then bring your elbows underneath your shoulders, shoulder width apart. Some things you can do here in Sphinx. So if this is not high enough for you to actually feel something in your spine, and you're only going to feel something if you relax your muscles and let your spine just sag due to gravity, then you can always go higher by using a prop. If you have a stiff bolster like this one, you can place it underneath your elbows, and then that raises up your shoulders 1 or 2 inches, and then that might be enough here to feel something. Or if you're feeling too much, maybe elbows have to go forward so that the sensations are acceptable. This is part of finding your edge. And then head can stay up. There's a little bit of yang in that because it takes muscles to hold your head up. You can let your head hang. Maybe that feels good, or maybe it doesn't. If holding it up and not holding it or letting it hang don't feel good, then find some prop that you can use to rest your head. I like to just let my head hang, so I'll do that, and then we'll stay here for a few minutes. So you're trying to just bone stack through your upper arm bones so that you can release the muscle in the rest of your torso and let your spine just droop. And you're noticing that light compression that's happening in your low back, the lumbar and the sacrum area of your spine here. And then find your breath. So because of all the hostile environment in Venus is why we haven't spent much attention to Venus here lately. If you watch the news and see where we're going and what we're interested in, all the interest points to Mars at the moment. And indeed, it's true, Mars much more hospitable, even though it's kind of the opposite of Venus. It's cold and deserty there. Still holds out more promise that maybe we can find life there, and it holds out more promise that maybe we can go there and have an easier time of exploring Mars than we would exploring Venus. That said, there was a tantalizing instant recently that maybe Venus might have had life in the past, although this is a case of a little bit of bad science here. So just recently, there was this big announcement that a chemical that was a biological marker was found in traces in the atmosphere of Venus. The chemical is called phosphine. And as far as we know, about the only thing that can make it are biological processes. So when you find a phosphine, you get really excited here. And it was thought that it was detected in the upper atmosphere. So it made big news, and that we should all get really excited about maybe taking a second look at Venus. But it turns out they reanalyzed this data that made that conclusion, and they realized that it actually wasn't a detection. It was actually just noise here. And so they didn't detect phosphine in Venus atmosphere. So unfortunately, our hopes are dimming again for Venus to be a place that harbors life, which means we can go back to focusing on Mars. Venus, for as all we can tell scientifically, really is the god of war, and Mars really is the goddess of love. This interesting, ironic entanglement of contrasting polarities of yin and of yang here. So just a couple more breaths here in Sphinx Pose. And still, Venus is of use to us as this brilliant, beautiful wandering star that cultures still honor and respect. As we gaze upon it in the mornings or in the evenings. One more breath here. Come out of Sphinx however you would like. Maybe the easiest way is to just lower yourself down onto your belly. You can stay there for a moment. Maybe you rest your head in your hands here and just notice the rebound from a fairly intense back bend. And then if you would like to, counter pose for this could be wide-legged child's pose. So make your way up onto your hands and knees. Bring your knees about midwidth apart, big toes touch, and then slowly sink your hips back toward your heels until they stop. And lower your torso forward, extend your arms forward. Just stay here for a couple of breaths here. Breathe into the back body, since the back body is opened up now here. And then bring yourself up. A little bit of integration before we move into our final resting pose. So make your way onto your back. Bend your knees, draw them into your chest. We'll try happy baby here. So knees go out wide a bit. Kind of interlace your arms in between your knees. Find your shins, your ankles, or your feet, and then aim the bottoms of your feet up towards the ceiling, and then pull with your arms to pull the feet, the shins, and the knees down towards the ground on either side of your rib cage here. And you can stay here in stillness, or you can try things like slowly rocking back and forth. Just a couple more breaths here, maybe one final oomph with the arms. And then go ahead and release. Make your way into your final resting position, your favorite restorative posture, maybe sitting in meditation, maybe legs up the wall, maybe just lying on the floor with arms and legs extended. I'm going to suggest recline the butterfly pose with legs on a bolster or on pillows. So if you just have pillows, you can use the pillows. I'll take this bolster, and what you'll do is you'll place this bolster at the end of your yoga mat, and then you'll lie back and you'll make butterfly legs. So feet together on the bolster, knees out wide so that the feet and the shins are resting comfortably on the soft padding of the bolster or the pillows if you're using them. And then you lean back and just rest, arms up to the side, maybe far enough away so the palms can face up here for a few moments of stillness, of quiet. So body is quieting. Notice places of tension here. And maybe you need to rearrange a little thing. By the way, if your neck is kinked and you have a pillow handy, by all means use that pillow to give your head and your neck a little bit of softness and support. Maybe soften the muscles in your face and in your jaw, around your eyes. Eyes can be open and defocused if they need to be opened, or they can be closed and introspective here. Soften your neck, soften your upper shoulders here. Soften your arms, so release your right arm, your right palm, and your right fingers. Release your left arm, your left palm, and your left fingers. Soften the muscles there. Release down through the rest of your torso. So rib cage is released, it's relaxed. Abdomen is soft. You can maybe feel the slight rise and fall of your abdomen as you breathe here. Continue to soften down through your hips, through your thighs and your knees, your lower legs, your shins, your ankles, heels, bottoms and tops of your feet. Soften all of your toes on both feet. And just allow yourself to root to all the contact points that your body is making with props or with the floor. Allow yourself to simultaneously melt into the floor and to sublimate into the air around the room. You have nowhere to go. You have nothing to do. Maybe you're just a brilliant, beautiful, wandering star whose only job it is to make lazy circles around the sun, being yourself. Bring your awareness back to the room. Begin to deepen your breath. Start to make little motions with fingers, toes. Expand that motion into wrists and into ankles. Make gentle motions with arms and with legs. Maybe slowly rock your head from side to side. When you're feeling ready, gently bend both knees and slowly roll over to one side. Rest here for a few breaths, and while you're here, cultivate a deep sense of gratitude for your practice, but also a deep sense of gratitude for you, your unique manifestation in this universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And when you're feeling ready, then slowly draw yourself up. Find a comfortable seat. Find that place where you feel stable and where you can get in touch with and connect with your inner ground. Draw your hands together in front of heart center. I'll end practice with an Om. You can either join in or just simply listen to my voice. The inner light in me honors the inner light in you. Namaste.